my co-host Pat has the opportunity to interview the co-founder and executive vice chairman of Alibaba Group, as well as Mike Milken, the philanthropist and founder of the Milken Institute. So join us for the next half an hour to learn more about entrepreneurship, about job transformation, and about the role of the financial system and how it can play a role in helping society get back on its feet. So over to you, Pat.
Thanks for joining us, and a big warm welcome to Mike and Joe. So MAS has been partnering with the Milken Institute for a number of years now, most notably the Milken Institute's prestigious Asia Summit. So Mike, it's great to have you involved today, and thanks for joining us. I've heard that as a child you had ambitions to be an astronaut. Is that true?
I had ambitions to run the space program. When you look at the stars, you realize that there is no other planet like Earth in our solar system, and maybe 4 million light years away, you'll find a planet at the next star. And that was kind of my mission. If we wanted humans to survive and our life to survive, I felt it was important someday to find another planet for us to go to. And I wrote a letter when I was 11 years old to the President of the United States, letting him know I wanted to run our space program. I had never missed a math or science problem. Unfortunately, I didn't have a response from the president. Maybe the fact that I told him I understood space travel from reading comic books hurt my chances.
So what would you say, Mike, are the key inflection points in your childhood that kind of led to where you are today?
It was really in 1969. I met a young African-American man who told me he wouldn't have access to capital because of his race. There was an event that occurred in Los Angeles on August 11th, which became known as the Watts riots. And I had met this man the next day, and my belief in the American dream, that's America with a small a, an opportunity to succeed based on your ability, not whether you're a man or a woman, your religion, your race, where you grew up, who your parents were, where you went to school. And now at 19 years old, I discovered there was another factor, and that factor was access to financial capital to build your business. So I went back to the University of California, Berkeley, changed my major to finance, began to study, and my goal was to democratize capital and make it available to millions of small businesses to grow.
That's a fantastic story, and thanks for sharing that. And so just to move on, Joe, so your achievements and contributions to the world have also been immense, and it's a real pleasure to have you involved. So we've heard from Mike the astronaut. So as a child, what were your ambitions and what did you aspire to be when you were growing up?
Well, my childhood was definitely not as ambitious as Mike's. Mike wanted to explore space and become an astronaut and do very big things. And what happened to me was my parents sent me away to school thousands of miles away from Taiwan, where I was born and raised. I was 13 years old, and I went to the United States to boarding school. I was a kid that grew up in a Chinese language environment. I went to Chinese school. I barely spoke English. And then I landed in this strange environment, boarding school in the United States in the East Coast, kind of a preppy environment. And really what I aspired to be was just to be one of the guys. To have people like me because I look different, I dress differently, didn't speak a lot of English. So I got into a lot of sports. I played American football. I tried out for baseball, got cut. Then I tried lacrosse. I also got cut from the swimming team. It's really a trial and error, but really it was a part of getting acclimated to an environment and getting the guys around me to accept me. And that was my biggest aspiration. I want to be accepted. And I think, as Mike has referred to, a big challenge in today's society is you could be discriminated against because you look different. And those that have been discriminated against try very, very hard to blend in, to be part of society, to be part of mainstream society. And this is what we see in today's society, where I believe the mainstream are not as sensitive to those that are trying very hard to be part of them, and maybe resistant. So a lot less ambitious than Mike.
But certainly very persistent, I think, which certainly shines through. And just wanted to pick up quickly around, your role as executive vice chairman. It seems to be quite an all-encompassing role. Can you kind of tell us what your daily routine looks like and how things are going at the moment?
Well, right now, my role at Alibaba is to look at the investments that we make, because I sit on the investment committees of both Alibaba Group and Financial. So from a day-to-day standpoint, I talk to our investment team, I talk to the other members of our investment committee, and that's kind of the role. But I'm basically, because I'm in Hong Kong right now, we're basically working from home. Over the last few weeks, we've had a spike of cases. So the government has acted very quickly to come down, and now all the restaurants are closed. So for us, it's really, for the last several months, we've been getting used to remote work, being able to get on the video calls with colleagues is actually, a big convenience. Because normally we would have to travel to Hangzhou, where, I travel between the US and Asia quite a bit. And you just realize that you are wasting a lot of time on the road. And being in one place, and also just being able to get on the video call very quickly with your colleagues, actually makes you closer to the people that you work with. So I think that's actually quite nice.
That's good to hear. And so we'll be covering a little bit around healthcare and the current kind of challenges as well as hope later on in the session. But each year, I kind of want to segue onto each year that we have a theme and a real cause that we champion and advance. And so from financial inclusion in our first year to sustainability last year, and this year we started thinking about our cause, and it was a no-brainer that we had to focus on people and talent, and to provide the support for the rising stars who will hopefully go on and heal the world, or ideally change the world, and to help people that have gone through some really tough times by driving forward talent development, reskilling and upskilling. And so Mike, I just want to see from your perspective, what do you see as some of the major shifts occurring in the future of work and the types of skill sets required?
Well, the major shifts in work were in place long before the coronavirus hit. And they are the deployment of technology and the fact that the use of technology will leverage your abilities. So it's a question of knowledge that you have. So education, access to education anywhere in the world, access to healthcare anywhere in the world. Access to financial knowledge anywhere in the world. And so these skills become more important. The percentage of the world's economy that's digitized goes up every day. And so it's software that's moving the world and knowledge. And so the skills are available. This coronavirus over the first half of 2020 has only accelerated and challenge this. And when you think about human capital, a close friend of mine who unfortunately passed away in 2014, and I began reading his work in 1966, Gary Becker, won a Nobel Prize for the concept that 75% of all the real assets in the world were the productivity of individuals. Later work has actually increased it more. And so you might want to accomplish something, but do you have the talent in your team to be able to do that? And constant re-education and upskilling, as you pointed it out. As some jobs are eliminated, others are created. And so societies today throughout the world have to create an opportunity for people to have constant learning. The idea that you're going to have one job or one career in your life is no longer a reality. You'll have multiple. And I'm sure in 20 years, the jobs that have been created, many of those companies and jobs don't exist today. But knowledge in agriculture, for example, with vertical farming, being able to use 1% of the water and 1% of the land will transform parts of the world who were worried about food security into being able to grow their own food from that standpoint. So these skills and education is freedom. One of the great challenges we have in the world is in sub-Saharan Africa and other emerging parts of the world, there will be billions of more individuals that are born. Every day in the world, there's about 400,000 to 450,000 children born. What are the jobs? What are the skills? What are their opportunities? And to me, it all starts with education as a fundamental roadblock and identifying what those jobs will be. In many ways, we have been introduced what I think is the future of this century, and that's the century of bioscience. And bioscience is more than your health. It's food, it's water, it's energy, it's air quality, and unfortunately, it's also defense. So I think getting people prepared for these jobs and having the knowledge to take advantage of these jobs, but it's somewhat the responsibility of companies to constantly create an opportunity of upskilling for their employees so that they can grow as the company grows.
No, thanks for sharing that, Mike. And Joe, what do you see as, what needs to happen to support people during these massive shifts from your vantage point?
Well, I think it's a whole society approach, from individual small owners of businesses to larger companies to government. When I observe what's happened to work during the coronavirus environment, is that our idea of working from home, it's very nice. We all have video uplinks and access to the internet, but most of the world is actually not like that. The whole idea of work from home is actually quite a elite white collar concept. Think about this. When the economy is shut down, your service economy, you can't go to the barber, you can't go to the restaurant. The transportation in the city is not running. Think of those jobs. Are those guys working from home? Absolutely not. They're not serving anybody and they're out of jobs. So we could sort of sit in our own cocoon and think about, I could work in the office, I could work from home, but there's a big part of the economy that can't work from home and will have to figure out a way to be supported. And the other observation I make about the COVID situation is that what we used to think as those take for granted jobs, the people that you never pay attention to and they just sort of happen, now have become essential workers. The bus driver, the hospital worker, the policeman, that's keeping our neighborhood safe. So what happens to these people, right? And they've been, and so as we look back, we feel that there's a big part of the population whose safety net is inadequate. And it would take a whole society approach. Fundamentally, I don't believe in people being out of job, sitting at home and just collecting checks, because there's a sense of self-worth that you have to have. People need to go back to work. But how do we create the environment, create the possibility and the positions that will get people back to work? I think in the future, there's going to be a whole slew of service-related jobs that will be open. If you're doing gym work from home, you're trying to exercise from home. Well, there needs to be a gym instructor at the other end of the video that could be hundreds of miles away. So how do we think about all of these new scenarios that will create new service jobs? Because we think, I think the service economy is really the future for most of the economy. As we see in China, a lot of manufacturing jobs have been lost over the last 5 to 10 years, but shifting to the service jobs. The service economy will employ a lot more people than manufacturing, as manufacturing gets replaced from robots. So I think we need to think about creating those jobs, and also making sure that what we used to take for granted as those take for granted workers, how to make sure that they're safe, that there's a safety net for them.
To build maybe for a moment on what Joe has said, those important jobs today also include the people that are in the fields picking vegetables or fruit to allow people to have access to food, the checker in a grocery store where they're physically going in and getting food. And I think you're going to see a substantial movement here to increase minimum wage in the United States and other places with the appreciation of the importance of the job. And I know in my own community, we have residents that go out and clap and cheer when the delivery driver comes and thanking them for bringing the essentials to their homes. And that's something they would have never done before. But I think this is a very important period for those that Joe talked about, service workers in restaurants or hotels that aren't working at the moment, to increase their knowledge and education skills and the ability to go online and access knowledge today that might provide for upskilling. There are a number of companies that have told their employees, even if we're not open, we're going to continue to pay you from a safety net here. But at the same point, let's see if we can get you upskilled to a better job in the future. And so technology is going to play an important role, but education determines the productivity of people in society. And I think this is in a period where people should all be focused on, can they increase their skills, if not in person, online.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it's good to see, some of the topics that you guys have just picked up on now, that humanity is beginning to shine through. I think I'd like to kind of stick with the transformation kind of theme and move on to the digital space. And, clearly the acceleration of digital technologies is having a profound impact on pretty much every industry in the world. And so, Joe, can you share a little bit more about what you're seeing and the impact that these changes are having on consumers and businesses?
Well, I think the last 6 months, when the whole world is suffering from COVID, we've seen an acceleration of digitization. So in every aspect of life, what you would expect to be digitized over the next 3 years have been forward accelerated to the most recent few months. So the digitization of going into a store shopping is going online. The digitization of going to restaurants is food delivery. And the digitization of live entertainment is going online into watching Netflix films. And for young kids, it's playing online videos. So over the last, I saw a data point that's very interesting. Over the last quarter, the number of hours that kids watch other kids play games, so this is like esports, on Twitch, which is an esports platform, and also on YouTube, was 6.5 billion hours. If you took the adult or the male population in the United States, because I assume mostly are young males watching other kids play esports, between the age of 10 and 25, there's about 30 million kids, young boys or young men. That's 6.5 billion hours, means on the average, every person watches 2.5 hours of other kids playing games. So this is massive digitization. But the other aspect of digitization is actually quite scary. It is the digitization of the person. your personal data, right? The government tries to contact trace, tries to control the spread of the virus. The starting point is very benign, but what ends up happening is your identity and your behavior, which used to be offline, is now being digitized and being tracked. I'm not trying to scare people, but also not trying to predict what the implications of all those things are. Some are good, and some may be bad.
And what are your views on that, Mike, and in terms of what you're seeing in the US from digital transformation? What are some of the trends that you're seeing on top of what Joe's just mentioned?
Well, let's start with finance. It's changing the world. The most valuable financial institution at the moment in the world is Visa. And the second most in the United States, depending on the day, is MasterCard. And if you take a company like PayPal today, PayPal is more valuable than a company like Goldman Sachs and Citibank put together. So I think for everyone focused on finance, from that standpoint, as Joe is focused on separating a financial company to the public, fintech an opportunity, but it also is a fantastic opportunity for the emerging developing markets where your bank is on your mobile device. And as many people are aware, when people started getting paid on their mobile device in countries in Africa, they thought they had a 20 or 30% increase in pay because the middleman or the foreman who took a percentage was gone. In terms of education, there's a whole revolution of knowledge available to you. Maybe the greatest transformation will be in healthcare. The largest files, as you might be able to find your doctor, is not even located in the same country you are as you download vital information that someone analyzes. So, and lastly, as Joe's pointed out, entertainment and media is being transformed, and particularly the opportunity for an interactive media where the person is not passive, as Joe talked about in video games or in esports, etc. So technology affords these. Joe's raised the concern of our freedoms, our independence, and whether the book 1984 is coming alive and has been accelerated because of our effort of tracing people today and trying to control the spread of COVID-19. But all technologies has pluses and minuses associated with it. But for most of the people in the world today, in spite of COVID-19, today is the best day they've ever known. Access to power in their mobile phone and a charger in the sun using solar. And so I see technology as an enabler. And most of your emerging markets or developing markets will bypass what has occurred. I don't see the creation of physical banks that existed, and then I see it going digital and having people access. And this digital will also provide capital to small and micro businesses throughout the world, as it already is doing, because they have a lot of data to make a decision on whether to loan you money or not. And so I see these micro loans. The transaction costs are so high, and they're pretty much eliminated in a digital world. So these small and medium businesses, which grow into large businesses over time, I see young tech entrepreneurs having an enormous opportunity to change the world for a better. And whether it's in the environment, alternative energy, electric cars, finance, healthcare, education, or media, I think we've only begun to see these changes occur.
Yeah, I think you've hit upon some great points there, in particular around making finance inclusive, and hopefully we're beginning to see that around the world. But I think, you know, what it's going to rely a lot on is entrepreneurship. And so while it's been a tough time for entrepreneurs around the world, you know, we're beginning to see the resilience of founders really shining through. And so, you know, valuations seem to have bounced back in the US and other parts of the world, in fintech in particular, while Singapore has recorded, you know, 650 million in fintech fundraising in the first half of this year, which is a big increase on the previous year. But, you know, there are some challenges, because starting out as an entrepreneur in today's climate, you know, is simply not going to be easy. And so, Joe, you know, I've got a question here around, you know, you've experienced a great deal on your entrepreneurial journey. You know, there's a certain story of your trip to Hangzhou in the early days of Alibaba, in which involved 15 shoes and apparently 15 toothbrushes. I think that springs to mind. And what advice can you give to entrepreneurs that are starting out in the current climate?
I think that the basic skill set of an entrepreneur, it's really part of the DNA of building a business, is about building a team. So in today's environment, I actually think it's a pretty good opportunity for entrepreneurs to look around them, to reach across to maybe some of the other companies that are, you know, can't take on more people. So the talent is now widely available, and trying to identify talent and bring them from the outside and partner with them, I think is a very important thing for the entrepreneurs to look at. I think this is a terrific opportunity, because a lot of people are looking for work, looking for a new situation. This is a point of transition for a lot of people, and people that used to not be able to recruit may be willing to listen to you now.
And I suppose transitions always create opportunities. So your message is for entrepreneurs to find the right people around them. And Mike, from your experience, you know, you've been involved in a number of initiatives and businesses. And what advice would you like to give to some of the entrepreneurs that are just starting out and trying to figure out what to do with the rest of their career?
I think one of the keys today that's so different. If I lived in Singapore, my market is not 6 or 7 million people in Singapore, or even the people in Malaysia. Technology, my market is the world. So everyone in the world is potentially my customer digitally from that standpoint. I think a lot of people from small countries often think about their own country and size of its economy. Obviously, I'm speaking to you from the United States today, and Joe is speaking to you from Hong Kong, but Alibaba is headquartered in China, Hangzhou, and I had the honor to go and visit last year. But you can do business anywhere in the world from Singapore, a kind of continent of Australia that seems far away from everyone. The speed of moving digital information, you could be next door. So I think the first thing for an entrepreneur is to understand the scalability of their business and understanding what markets they're appealing to. I think the challenge of digitization of everything is to understand, can your business be disintermediated by technology? What are you offering? What is the value? And as we started this conversation, Joe has underlined it, the most important factor is your team, the people. It makes up most of your assets, and the dislocations that have occurred in the United States. Out of 15.5 small businesses, micro businesses, you had 3 to 4 million already go out of business. Now, they could have been restaurants and other things that required physical interaction. But you have a lot of talent and entrepreneurial talent available today because of these changes that have occurred. But I think I would just stress, think of your business as to who you're serving. And the needs are so significant in so many fields. What is the value added you're providing today? And digitization of some sort, with computers 1 million times faster, and 7 million more or 8 million mobile phones existing today on the planet, and access throughout the world. There's opportunities that you never have before. So if you're opening a product or a store, you don't have to just have customers next door. And the infrastructure that's been built, whether it's in China with Alibaba's ability to deliver, or Amazon or other companies around the world, or Coupon in South Korea. The whole distribution chain has changed dramatically. And before you might build a brand for 30 or 40 years, there's a way today to introduce a new brand in a very short period of time. So I would say to you, today is probably the best time to be an entrepreneur someplace in the world. And what better place than to be in Singapore?
Fantastic. That's a great message, and a real message of hope for entrepreneurs out there that are on the beginning of their journey, which is an exciting time. There's no doubt about that. But lastly, Mike, I'd kind of like to touch upon some of the great work that the Milken Institute is doing to support advancements for cures and treatments for COVID-19 around the world. And, can you share some hope with the audience today?
In many ways, I think we'll all be judged on what we did during this period of time and whether we deployed our talents. So beginning on February 20th, we reoriented all 10 centers in the Milken Institute, our family foundation, our medical foundations, to focus on the COVID crisis. And some of those are financial safety nets, economic safety nets from that standpoint. There are over 450 between 190 plus vaccines, antivirals, antibodies, immunology agents. And the cooperation between for-profit and nonprofit and the sharing of data is greater than I've ever seen in the 50 years that I've worked in the field of medical research. There are 18 or more vaccines that have already gone into human beings. Companies like Moderna is now in phase 3. Governments have stepped forward. In the United States, there's an agency called BARDA. It's part of Health and Human Services, and they've put up billions of dollars to help build manufacturing and to have people make products before they know that have worked. This is the first time really in history. So hundreds of millions of doses of vaccines will be available. And countries around the world are grappling with the idea that if a vaccine does appear to be useful and successful, how do we get it to the citizens of the world? How is it distributed? So those issues are already been addressed. It was our feeling that the cost to the US alone was $1 trillion a month of this coronavirus. So investing 5 or 10 billion to build manufacturing plants or to produce product that might never be used is a very small amount. And I think every day there's probably a new vaccine. So the world, I think, should feel optimistic today. Just to give you an example, Johnson & Johnson, I had done a podcast with Alex Gorski. This is the most valuable healthcare company in the world. And they announced that they would hope their vaccine would go into human beings in January of 21. It went into human beings in July of 20. In just 3 months, it was accelerated from 9 months to 3 months, and it's already going into individuals and looks very promising. So whether it's antivirals, whether it's antibodies, whether it's immunology agents, there are so many things that work today that stop the cytokine storm, the over-generation of your immune system. All cancer immunology drugs have had to deal with that. So that is not going to be a solution for the virus, but it's a solution to prevent maybe anyone dying or going to your lungs. So you can always go to milkeninstitute.org and look at all the 450 things that are moving along, and we update them every day. And I think the world has come together on this issue, and almost every country in the world is affected by it. So I couldn't be more optimistic that we will actually have a vaccine in human beings in 2020, not 21, that works.
That's fantastic. And thank you for giving us hope. And it's great to see humanity shining through. I think that's all we've got time for at the moment. And I just want to say, thank you very much, Joe, for making the time, and Mike as well for sharing some hope with our audience today. And I hope, again, that we get to see each other in person in the future. Thank you very much.